Hello all and welcome to this week's episode of White Wanderer, and hopefully if all goes to plan it will be a rather exciting one, so fingers crossed. Where am I today then? Well, I am out in Thorness Bay, which is a beautiful little area located on the northwestern coast of the Isle of Wight. And regular viewers will remember that a couple of months ago I actually came out here in search of the oldest railway carriage on the island. One of the first batch of 4 to ever cross the Solent, built by Wright Sons in 1862 for the Cowes Newport Railway, and thus formed part of the island's very first passenger train. And there she is, perched on the side of the hill overlooking the gorgeous Thorness Bay. She's now been lovingly restored as a holiday chalet and christened Clarabel. And at 163 years old, I think Clarabel looks pretty good for her age. Now, if you've seen the previous video I alluded to, you'll know that Thorness Bay is a bit of a treasure trove when it comes to old carriage bodies, many of which were sold off for domestic use by the Southern Railway in the 1920s and 30s. And with this in mind, a couple of weeks after the initial video, I returned to Thorness with my friend Gary to see how many old carriages we could find in the vicinity. And in doing so, we came across a second Cowes Newport Railway carriage, sat at the bottom of the hill. This one was cocooned within an outer casing to protect the body from the weather and to stop it from falling apart. We can only presume then that carriage number 2 is in worse shape than Clarabel. In bad shape it may be, but it is still an original Cowes Newport Railway carriage from 1862, and it still survives in 2025. So that is 2 of the 4 accounted for. But it gets even better, because believe it or not, and as I found out recently, a 3rd one still survives. Indeed it does. A carriage which has gone relatively unnoticed until lately. The reason for its opaqueness is simple. It's on private land away from prying eyes, and has only been witnessed a handful of times. This then has seemingly led to some confusion pinpointing its identity, especially in online blogs. One identifying it as an ex-Metropolitan 4-wheeler, perhaps of Isle of Wight Newport Junction Railway origin. And another survey in 2019 listed it as a North London Railway coach, likely one that was bought second-hand by the Isle of Wight Railway in the 1890s, much like the one which is now preserved at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. They are though wrong, and I know they're wrong because Peter from the Carriage and Wagon Workshop at Haven Street said they are wrong. And when it comes to the history and subject of railway carriages on the Isle of Wight, his word is gospel. But there is a reason for the resemblance to the NLR stock, because these 4 carriages that came to the Cowes and Newport Railway were actually built to an early NLR design. But essentially they never ran on the North London Railway, instead being shipped brand new to the Isle of Wight. So it would appear then that this carriage, in all its ambiguity, is one of the 4 which came to the island at the very dawn of our railway history. And alongside the other 2 survivors, it is older than any passenger carriage preserved at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. However, by the time you actually see this video, that statement will be false, because today this original Cowes and Newport Railway carriage is actually being saved for preservation by the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. This is brilliant news, not only because it means another historical railway object is being saved from an uncertain future, but also because for the heritage line, this carriage is a vital missing piece of the railway jigsaw. However, Before I get too whimsical about the whole scenario, there is a bit of a catch. Not so much involving the steam railway, but rather me here in Gurnard. Apparently the owner of the property isn't too keen on me turning up filming on their land, which is fair enough. It's their property, their rules. But this sadly means that I can't get any footage of the carriage body being loaded onto the truck. But what I'm going to try and do is get some photos from someone who is allowed on site. For me though, the one place I know I can film is the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. So I'm going to head there. I went then to wait patiently at the steam railway for news of updates on what was going on, having been previously informed that the carriage was in a rather tricky location for the crane to access. So there was no real guarantee if the move was going to happen, and it could well be called off at the last minute. Very soon though, I got the news I was hoping for. The carriage had made it onto the truck and was on its way to Haven Street. As our carriage arrives on site then, I get my first look at this ancient railway relic, which despite its age and rather weathered appearance, I'm told the main beams and underframe are in remarkably good shape. Our carriage then has officially made it to Haven Street Yard. But in the words of Basil 40, now comes the tricky bit. Due to the size of the crane and the lack of space in the yard, to be able to transfer the carriage to the underframe, it will have to be lifted up over the loco hoist. Our 163-year-old railway relic is going to fly. Oh, blimey. After some pretty nail-biting stuff, our carriage slowly but surely touches down on terra firma. And here she is then, on the underframe, on the rails, here at Haven Street, and I am absolutely ecstatic, so overjoyed that she has finally made it. An original Cowes Newport Railway carriage from 1862, which would have formed part of the very first passenger train on the Isle of Wight all those years ago. And it is here at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, ready to be preserved for future generations to enjoy. So what about Clarabel then? Well, she's still here basking in the sun and enjoying the views, but when it comes to preserving her and restoring her to her former glory, I guess Clarabel will just have to wait and see what the future holds. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next week.